It's time for our weekly best decks roundup of Marvel Snap. We're going to be covering 14 different decks today that are a mix of proven classics that you can ladder up with, as well as fancy new things that look to have some potential. Let's go ahead and get into it, shall we? We kick off today with one of my personal favorite archetypes in Marvel Snap that I've been finding success with lately, and that is a bounce deck featuring Hitmonkey and Bishop as its two largest scaling threats. A key part of this deck is the fact that we are playing Iceman and Korg in our one energy cards. These disruptive elements give our deck a chance against things like Mr. Negative and other bigger combo decks that make larger numbers than us by making sure their game plan never gets off the ground by disrupting them from the start. This deck list also has some scaling numbers in its one energy plays. Silver Sable and American Chavez stack up points, and then Surge is kind of our extra energy cheater in this deck. Can be replaceable by something like Black Swan if you have it, to allow you to have big bursts on that final turn of the game to charge your Hitmonkey up to the max. Moving into our high potential category, we have deck lists that have shown promising stats and untapped and albeit smaller sample sizes. Namora popped up back on the map during our tech card downgrade temporary OTA, and even after they've readjusted some things back up, such as Shadow King, this deck list is still putting up pretty solid metrics. You're able to put up absolutely massive stats on the board, whether it's Wong into Namora into Odin, or Wong into Black Panther into Arnim Zola, Lasher doubling up its bonuses, and Jeff allowing you to move around with some finesse. This deck list has backup plans and can get linear in a couple of different ways. Speaking of tech cards getting a boost back up, an interesting tech configuration putting up some numbers on untapped in smaller sample size is this Sauron tech card variation. We've got a variety of ways to interface with our opponents here: Red Guardian, Shadow King, Enchantress, and Warhead. And some of these even serve double duty, with Enchantress not only being meaningful stats as a 5/8, but also being able to wipe away detrimental ongoing effects from things like Red Skull, Lizard, and Starbrand for us if Sauron didn't line up ideally with them. It's interesting that this deck is leveraging kind of a created cards package just for good rates, the bottom end of its curve. We've got Kate Bishop as well as Mirage, and then Merlin giving us a little bit of utility, being able to mitigate some location variance for us, as well as just pile up stats all on his own. He can also serve as kind of a mini Sarah type role, giving you extra energy going into the last turn of the game, so you can play more than one disruptive card, with +2 notably allowing you to Red Guardian and Enchantress all at the same time. Wiccan tech card enjoyers seem to always find a way, no matter the metagame, with this variation featuring Quicksilver and Domino as your 1 and 2 to fill out your early curve, with then a glut of good threes being the most popular right now. Viv Vision making a solid appearance here as well, and I think that makes a lot of sense. Domino's 4 points of power into Viv Vision's 3 now gives you 7 points in the third turn of the game, meaning you're often going to get 1 or 2 sets of buffs out of her before your opponent's able to contest. And honestly, if you follow up with your 4 energy play having 7 stats into her lane, you're probably going to get even more than that. This deck list disrupts in a few different ways, with Cosmic Ghost Rider and Eliath featuring at the top end of your curve, and then Mobius and Gambit being in the middle, allowing you to break your opponent's stuff up in a few different ways. We've also got a variety of ways to put bigger stats into play. Past Viv, we have Infinity Ultron that has a little bit of utility, and then Galactus First Steps also working quite well with Quicksilver and Domino, giving you Heralds the start of the game with guaranteed power. Darkhawk is one of those Marvel Snap cards that I firmly believe is almost always more powerful than its play rate implies, and occasionally we see a deck list like this one pop up that reminds people of this fact. The disruptive elements that Korg and now Terex create by pumping rocks into your opponent's decks lets you win so many games that you'd otherwise be completely outclassed in, because you just made your opponent's strategy completely fall apart. Those aren't the only interactive bits that this deck has going for it, with Negasonic Teenage Warhead as well as Eliath working in tandem with Supergiant, who blanks cards face down for a turn to absolutely devastate what your opponent has going on. I also absolutely love Quake making an appearance here. She's one of the highest cube equity 2 energy plays in Marvel Snap, winning you a lot of games on the spot when you catch your opponent off guard with her effect. Our next deck list is one that I'm really happy to see is looking to have some staying power. It's been in the high potential section a couple of times now since Jim Hammond released, and I'd honestly be kind of surprised if it doesn't keep popping up as we move into the future. This archetype has Sunspot and Jim Hammond at the bottom end of your curve to take advantage of the extra energy that Luna Snow and even the Fallen One can provide. And then you have a mixture of different potent things at your top end that, when paired with Shuri or conserving extra energy with She-Hulk and Warlock, give you big bursts the last turn of the game that's difficult for your opponent to keep up with. This deck list's main downside is the fact that its numbers are a little bit more on the fair side for a combo deck. So while it's very consistent, bigger combo decks like Mr. Negative can go over the top of you, but this deck has the upside of being pretty resilient to opposing interaction since you have so many scaling threats. You can often wait to play them out thanks to She-Hulk and Warlock giving you energy reduction. As we move into our top performers this week, we have our first appearances from our latest card release in Jocasta, who reactivates your activate abilities at a given location. This end of turn variation has been running around in the wild for a little bit, and Jocasta could let you double up Invisible when first steps, as well as Fantastic Car. I feel like it's only fair to call out, though, that this is far from the only build of end of turn putting up metrics, with this other build not featuring Jocasta and more disruptive cards like Mobius, Juggernaut, and Stardust still putting up good stats as well. It's unclear to me from a data-driven perspective at the moment if Jocasta is actually adding meaningful value to these types of decks, or if the builds focusing on more disruptive cards are better. It can often take a couple of weeks to really sort out those details in the wash, since people are kind of compelled to play the new card because it's shiny, and then weekend missions prop up its play rate a little bit more as well. The other established deck that Jocasta is popping up in is the discard archetype. This build, again, typically has a flex slot that Jocasta is now occupying here. In the past, we've seen people put things like Bastion or Grandmaster or Moon Girl or Arnim Zola and others in this slot, with, I think, kind of the core of this bullseye deck and discard deck being good enough that that 12th slot could be a variety of different things that gives you value in different edge cases. The big upside Jocasta has in this build is obviously that she lets you activate Bullseye twice, but more importantly, she means you can draw Bullseye on the 6th turn of the game and then play him to Jocasta's lane and still get a single activation out of him. This adds an element of consistency to the deck, making it so you can draw one of your key payoffs a little bit later and still get to actually use it before the game is done. While I was expecting Moira X to be pretty playable after I experimented with her earlier this month, I'm actually kind of surprised just how much she has improved the Destroy archetype by. This is the best performing deck in Marvel Snap right now across a variety of different data slices that are the most competitive that Untapped has to offer. And in my anecdotal experience playing with this deck, there's a highlight with it going up on my daily highlights channel this weekend. It's quite powerful. Moira lets you add consistency and power and unpredictability to this deck. Having 2 copies of Death is so much cube equity that's impossible for your opponent to account for in a lot of situations. And in terms of a raw power level, when you combine Moira with Null and X23, getting 2 of Destroy's biggest payoffs in different spots on the board is difficult for a lot of people to keep up with from a purely linear perspective. This archetype was still performing well even when Killmonger was neutered to hit just his lane, and now that he's back to his full strength, this archetype is firmly at the top of the metagame. The Move Tribunal deck is graduating from high potential to top performer this week as it continues to rack up sample sizes in solid metrics. This deck list has a relatively neutral 50-ish% win rate, but its cube equity is just so high, which perhaps could come down as people finally learn to respect the output range that it has. Even if you wait until the absolutely last turn of the game to start deploying your Human Torch between Hercules and Sparky and all the other things that move it around, you could very regularly get up to double and triple digits across all of your lanes spread out by Living Tribunal once everything comes out. It's honestly kind of amusing to see just how strong this archetype is after Human Torch moved to 3. There were a lot of people thinking that it could be the end of Move, and especially this card specifically, but the fact that this card now dodges Killmonger is actually upside in a lot of places, especially with Destroy being one of the other top decks in the meta right now. Victoria Hand continues to be a stellar stats package in tandem with Frigga and Moon Girl to put out points efficiently across the board in a way that's often difficult for your opponent to account for. One of the big strengths of this style of deck is the fact that Victoria Hand allows you to add a bunch of points into lanes you otherwise filled up, meaning your opponent often feels safe before you pop out a bunch of stats at the end of the game. The deck list mixes in a dash of disruption with Shadow King, giving you a chance into deck lists like Destroy that are typically going over the top of you with things like Deadpool. I will call out this is probably one of the archetypes that has the least solidified core deck list, with specifically Victoria, Frigga, Moon Girl, Quinjet being consistent across a lot of them, but the details, even so far as the Hood Misery package and which tech cards you're playing, vary a lot. You can find a lot of success still while customizing all of the details here. Our final top performer this week puts a smile on my face. Spectrum Destroyer continuing to put up solid results for the second week in a row since Destroyer was buffed up to 18 points of power. This classic archetype is back with a vengeance, and you absolutely love to see it. There are other ongoing variations finding success as well, with another one that caught my eye being this particular one that's a little bit lower to the ground and is featuring Bastion as well as Astral Projection here as a way to double up your powerful on reveal effects, similar to the Victoria Hand decks we just looked at. I think there's a ton of customization and different paths you can build on going in, so don't feel like you have to be limited to exactly the 12 cards that are featured here in this video. I'd encourage you to experiment with which interactive bits and payoffs end up working best for you. Feels great to have the metagame in a great spot as we coming to the end of another phenomenal Marvel Snap season. We had the official Marvel zombie stuff spoiled for next month's season on the Marvel Snap YouTube channel. Keep an eye out here on Hoaglandia Snap for a review of those cards and which ones I think are best uses of your resources we head on into our spooky season later this month. As always, if you enjoyed my roundup, smash that like button. I appreciate everybody that made it all the way through to the end of today's video, and I hope your next snap pack is an excellent one.